I pulled off at a rest stop outside Terrytown, killed the engine, and just sat there, staring at my own hands, still sticky from the damn brisket. That house I walked away from, I used to think it was a fortress, solid, impressive, untouchable. Truth is, it always felt more like a stage. My dad, Gerald Dunham, was the king of that stage. Built Dunham Capital Partners from scratch. Big name firm, fast track to wealth if you played it right. At home, it was all numbers and posture. Success wasn't rewarded, it was demanded. And Mom? She ran the PR department. Every holiday was a photo shoot. She sent out Christmas cards in October because December was too cluttered. Our birthdays were tied to business dinners. Image is equity, she used to say. I was still in middle school when she taught me how to shake hands like a senator. Greg bought into it completely. Princeton, then Wharton. VP by 30. The kind of guy who could quote Buffett and charm your girlfriend in the same breath. Perfect suit, perfect smile. Dad used to say, Greg knows how to carry the name. I didn't carry it right, apparently. I went to Syracuse, got into branding, digital campaigns. People laughed. So, you make logos? When I joined the firm at 27, they dumped me in marketing like it was a charity move. I didn't complain, I hustled, worked weekends, took red-eyes to pitch decks in Seattle, Austin, Denver. 5 years later, I was leading client engagement. My team ran retention, revenue went up, but to my family, I was still the creative one. They never said it outright, but I saw the looks, the nods at dinners, the fake smiles when I talked numbers. Then I found something. I was prepping a portfolio showcase for an investor gala in Miami. Just routine cleanup, making the visuals tight. But one report didn't match the accounts. I dug in, kept finding weird transfers, funds moving to offshore entities, random accounts with generic tags like Project Equity and Consult Reserve. I double-checked everything, made copies, and brought the file to my dad's office. He was reading the journal like always, tie loosened but still sharp. Hey, I think we've got a reporting issue, I said, laying the file down. These numbers don't line up. There's activity showing up off books. Before I could finish, he slapped the file shut, hard. That's over your pay grade, he snapped. I just stared at him. It's our reporting. This could blow up. Stay in your lane, Bryce. Then he stood, grabbed the file, and walked it straight to his shredder. That moment told me everything I needed to know. This place wasn't a fortress. It was a shell, and they'd rather burn it down than admit a crack in the walls. I walked out of his office that day with my stomach twisting. Didn't even make it to my car before I threw up in a trash can near the elevator. And for the first time, I started thinking, what the hell else were they hiding? The day after that meeting with my dad, my work login failed. I figured it was a glitch. I'd reset it. 2 days later, my access to client financials was restricted. By the end of the week, my calendar was blank. Every meeting I'd prepped for had been reassigned, mostly to Greg, a couple to Nate. At first, I told myself it was just corporate reshuffling, a rough week, nothing new. But I wasn't an idiot. I walked into a Thursday pitch review I was supposed to lead, and Nate was already in the room with my slides pulled up. He didn't even look surprised. Hey, didn't get the memo, he said, like it was funny. Didn't know you'd be running it, I shot back. Just filling in. Greg said you were slammed. I looked him dead in the eye. I wasn't. He shrugged, smiled, and kept going like nothing happened. That guy had been my best friend since college, freshman year dorms. I was the one who got him the interview at Dunham. I was the one who told my dad, he's loyal. He's family. Guess I wasn't great at spotting snakes. Uncle Ron used to have my back too. He was my dad's younger brother and the firm's legal counsel. The only one who used to say things like, Bryce gets it. He sees things Greg doesn't. He even called me sharp once. Then suddenly, silence. He stopped dropping by my office, stopped inviting me to meetings. At the next board presentation, he sat beside Greg and acted like I didn't exist. But I kept my head down, pushed through it, built a few small wins. Then I landed Merit Holdings. That was the whale. My dad had chased them for 6 years. I'd built the relationship from the ground up. Calls, dinners, branding audits, everything. They finally signed. I walked into the Monday executive check-in, expecting at least a nod. Instead, what did you offer them? Dad asked. I looked up. What? Discounts? Side deals? You don't land Merit by chance. I landed them because I know what I'm doing. Greg chimed in. "We just need to confirm there's no irregularities." That's when I snapped. Funny how you want to confirm things now. Nobody laughed. 2 weeks later, I handed in my resignation. No party, no handshake, just a cold HR email and a final walk to the elevator. I took 5 clients with me, started Dunham brand strategy the next day from my apartment in Stamford. No backing, no help, just my name and the laptop they forgot to wipe. Mom never called. Greg sent one text, called me a liability to the legacy, said I'd embarrassed the family. Dad didn't bother reaching out at all. His lawyer did. Sent a cease and desist accusing me of client poaching and trade secrets. I sent back a legal note of my own, fact-based, bulletproof. Never heard from them again. Only one person still met me for beers, my cousin Tyler, youngest in the family. Just made junior analyst. He looked rough that night. Dark circles, chain smoking outside the bar like it was habit. "Something's off," he said, nursing his third Miller Lite. Nobody talks straight anymore. Greg's panicked. Ron's stressed. Even Nate's acting sketchy. Sketchy how? He's too involved in everything, stuff he's not supposed to see. Internal docs, travel records. He's everywhere. I stared at my drink. Then Tyler leaned in. "I think something big's coming, man. You got out just in time." Tyler's warning sat in the back of my head like a live wire. I told myself it didn't matter. Told myself I wasn't going to play their game anymore. But then Thanksgiving rolled around. That holiday was carved in stone in our family. Rain or shine, marriage or divorce, somebody could get hit by a truck and Mom would still serve at 3 sharp. I figured if there was ever a time they'd drop the grudge, it'd be this. So I called her a week before, straight to the point. "Is dinner still at 3? There was a pause. Then she said, "Of course, and wear something respectable." It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either, just clipped. Still, I took the win. I cooked the brisket low and slow overnight, same rub she used to ask for on Father's Day. I picked out a dark green sweater, one of the only ones she ever complimented, and trimmed my beard down to almost clean. No games, no attitude, just trying to show up and be part of it. I even grabbed a bottle of small batch bourbon from a client's new distillery down in Kentucky. Handwritten label, the kind Dad would usually nod at and say, "Now, that's the good stuff." I loaded everything in the truck around noon and hit the Taconic. Leaves were almost gone, cold wind on the highway. Still, I had this dumb optimism in my chest like maybe, just maybe, they'd remember I was still their son. Rehearsed a few compliments in the car. Something about Greg's new real estate venture in Charlotte. A line about Nate's leadership potential just in case. Even practiced sounding sincere. When I pulled up, the driveway was full. Greg's SUV, Uncle Ron's Cadillac. But then I saw Nate's truck. That caught me off guard. I sat there for a second, hands on the wheel, heart beating faster than it should have. But I told myself, he's probably just passing through. Maybe they invited him to patch things up. I grabbed the tray of brisket from the passenger seat, bourbon in my coat pocket, and walked up the flagstone steps I'd walked 1,000 times before. I rang the bell. The door opened almost immediately. Dad stood there, suit jacket, clean shave, not a wrinkle out of place. Mom right behind him in pearls. Like they were posing for a catalog. He didn't blink. "You're not invited," I blinked back. "What?" "Dinner's for family this year. You told me 3 o'clock. There's been a change." Then he started to close the door. Not slam it, just calmly, like he was putting away a piece of old mail. But I looked past him, just enough to see the truth. Nate was already at the table, sitting in my seat, Greg across from him, half smiling. Uncle Ron swirling red wine like it was just another normal year. "Why?" I asked. My voice didn't even sound like mine. Mom didn't flinch. "Your choices have consequences." She might as well have punched me. I didn't say another word, just stood there, brisket in one hand, bottle in the other. Then I turned around, walked back down those perfect steps, slow and steady. Every footfall heavier than the last. Got to my truck. Popped the tailgate. Set the tray down carefully like it mattered. The bourbon clanked as I dropped it beside it. I didn't get in right away. I just stood there, cold air on my neck, hands shaking, teeth clenched so hard I thought I'd crack a molar. Behind me, the door clicked shut. Inside that house, they laughed and poured wine and cut into turkey. Like I'd never even existed. I didn't drive home right away. I took the long turn off Route 9 and followed it down to a gravel pull-off near the Hudson. The kind of spot teenagers sneak off to drink and couples park at to argue in private. I dropped the tailgate, sat down, and popped the bourbon open. Didn't even bother with a cup. Just took a long pull straight from the bottle. The cold wind came off the water hard and fast. Felt like it was trying to slap the shame out of me. I sat there in that sweater Mom liked, holding a bottle my dad used to love, with a tray of brisket nobody wanted sitting 5 feet behind me. I was done pretending, done hoping, done spinning excuses in my head for people who made it real clear they didn't want me anywhere near them. A few months back, I'd gotten drinks with Darren Cross, old buddy from Syracuse, now working at the SEC. Smart guy, quiet but sharp. We were at a bar in Midtown, just catching up. I'd half joked, "You guys ever look into Dunham Capital? Something about the book smells off." He didn't laugh. He just looked at me, dead serious, and asked, "You keeping files?" I had. I always backed things up. Emails, reports, call logs, exported Excel sheets. Not because I thought I'd need them, but because something in me never fully trusted the setup. That night, I went home and organized everything into a single folder labeled insurance. Forgot about it after that. Until now. I took another long pull from the bourbon, wiped my mouth, and pulled my phone out. My fingers were stiff, slow from the cold. But I scrolled to Darren's number and hit call. He picked up on the third ring. "Hey," I said. My voice was low, flat. "I'm ready." He didn't hesitate. "Bring what you got tomorrow. We'll look into it." That was it. No big speeches, no questions. Just a line in the sand. I hung up, stared out over the water, and felt the shift in my gut. Not nerves, not fear, just clarity. Like flipping on headlights in a tunnel I'd been driving through blind for years. They'd cut me out like I was disposable. But I still had the truth. I stood up, tossed the bottle cap into the bed of the truck, and closed the tailgate hard. The sound echoed off the water like a gunshot. Then I climbed in, started the engine, and drove toward the city with one plan in my head. Burn the whole lie down. I got back to my place in Stamford just after 10. Didn't even take my coat off. Went straight to the office in the back room, pulled the blackout curtain, locked the door. Then I slid the key out from behind the bookshelf and opened the bottom cabinet. Everything was there, stacked in labeled folders, some in hard copy, most on encrypted USBs. I laid it all out across the desk. Spreadsheets, flagged accounts, memos I'd printed and never sent. Drafts of presentations with data that didn't match what was on the books. My hands shook as I flipped through it all. Not from nerves, but from how deep it went. One of the first things I noticed again. Discrepancies in fund activity. Client A was told one number, the internal reports showed another. Large transfers dated the same day. Money moved fast and quietly to offshore accounts, with vague labels like strategic reserve or bridge equity support. No real purpose, just movement. Then came the emails. I still had full archives downloaded from when I ran engagement. No one bothered to revoke that access until weeks after I left. I searched my own name. First one that hit hard was from Greg to Dad. Bryce shouldn't see the Edison files. Lock it down. Then Nate chimed in on another thread. Redirect him to the Thompson pitch. He's getting suspicious. So that was it. While I was working late, busting my ass, my best friend was feeding them everything I said. Then I opened a photo folder, one I hadn't looked at before. Lake house, summer, Greg and Nate sitting on the dock. Close. It wasn't the relationship that got me. It was the betrayal. All that time I'd been defending them, trusting them, thinking maybe I was the paranoid one. They'd already cut me out of the loop, closed ranks. The emails got darker from there. Dad wrote, "Nate will take over Bryce's accounts. He's earned that loyalty." Greg replied, "We'll say Bryce lacked discretion. Start spinning that early." My stomach turned. They weren't just sidelining me. They were building a narrative, something they could point to when things blew up. I didn't waste another minute. I scanned every physical document, labeled each file, and backed up the entire archive onto 2 encrypted drives, one for Darren, one for safekeeping. Then I opened a new email and attached the whole damn thing. No long message, just, "Everything's here. More if needed. Let me know." I hit send. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Darren. Got it. Going through it now. We'll loop you in first thing tomorrow." Then it really started. Phone lit up again. Greg. I let it ring. Then Mom. Bryce, don't do anything stupid. Nate, finally. Call me. You're blowing this out of proportion. Voicemails, texts, back to back. You've made a mistake. Let's talk before this gets worse. Don't be emotional. You're overreacting. I didn't answer a single one. I just sat back, closed the laptop, and stared at the drives sitting on the desk like loaded weapons. They thought I'd stay quiet, take the hits and crawl off somewhere. They forgot who raised me. I didn't sleep that night, just paced, answered a few follow-up questions from Darren, and waited for the hammer to drop. It didn't take long. By 9 the next morning, the news broke. SEC had launched a formal investigation into Dunham Capital. Allegations of fraud, foreign account manipulation, falsified client statements. The story ran top line on CNBC before I'd even finished my coffee. By 11, the firm froze trading. Clients were pulling out in waves. Phones at headquarters blew up. I know, because Tyler texted me just 2 words. It's chaos. By 2, they showed up at my apartment. All of them. I heard the knock and looked through the peephole. Dad in front, red-faced and fuming. Mom right behind him, trembling, jaw clenched. Greg stared at the floor. Nate looked like he wanted to be anywhere but there. I opened the door, didn't say a word. Dad pushed right past me. We need to talk. Everyone followed like it was rehearsed. He didn't sit, didn't breathe, just turned in the middle of the room and barked, "You need to walk this back." "Too late," I said. "They've got everything." "You don't understand what this will do to our name," Mom snapped. She was shaking but still found her voice. "This isn't just about money." I stepped closer. "You made that choice. I just held up a mirror." Greg finally broke the silence, sank down onto the armrest like his legs couldn't hold him, rubbed his eyes with both hands. "It wasn't always like this," he said, voice low. "We just kept pushing, one lie at a time. By the time we wanted out, we were already buried." I didn't say anything. Let the silence sit. Then Nate tried. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. He took a step forward. "Bryce, we were friends. I didn't know how far it went." I looked straight at him. "You sat at the table while I stood outside. You made your choice." He looked down, said nothing else. The front door creaked open again. Uncle Ron, he looked 10 years older than the last time I saw him. No jacket, tie loose, face pale. "They're gonna try to pin this on you," he said quietly. "Greg, Nate, maybe even me. The lawyers are already strategizing." "Let 'em try," I said. "I didn't touch a dollar. I kept records. The SEC knows the difference." Dad stepped forward again, same stiff, controlled tone he used on conference calls. "We can make this go away. A settlement. NDA. You want a cut? A new firm? A title?" I almost laughed. "You think this is about money?" He didn't blink. "I already got what I needed," I said. "My conscience." Greg stood. His hands were shaking now. "He controls your trust fund too," he said, not looking at me. "He's been tapping into it, using it to patch shortfalls. Your name's on accounts you never signed for." That landed like a punch to the ribs. I stared at Dad. He didn't deny it, just clenched his jaw and looked away. That was it. "Get out," I said. Nobody moved. I said, "Get the hell out of my apartment." Greg grabbed Mom's arm. Uncle Ron opened the door. One by one, they shuffled out like a funeral procession. Nate was the last to leave. He looked at me like he wanted to say something else. I didn't give him the chance. I slammed the door behind him, locked it. Then I stood there in the silence, chest pounding, ears ringing, like I'd just stepped out of a war zone, because I had. A year later, I stood in my backyard in New Canaan, watching the smoker handle a 15-pound turkey like a pro. You could smell hickory all the way to the front gate. I had a cold beer in one hand, carving knife in the other, and for the first time in years, no pit in my stomach. My business had tripled. Dunham Brand Strategy became one of the top boutique firms on the East Coast. Darren came through big, introduced me to 3 heavyweight clients who had all been burned by Dunham Capital and wanted a cleaner way forward. The old firm, gutted. Dad negotiated house arrest. No prison, of course. Rich men always find the loophole. But the empire was gone. Greg lost all his licenses, had to surrender his Series 7, 63, 24, everything. Nate packed up and moved to LA, tried rebranding himself as a financial wellness coach on YouTube. That flopped. Mom disappeared into some healing retreat in the Catskills. I haven't heard a word since April. Uncle Ron stepped down quietly and faded from the board, but he reached out once, said, "You did what I never had the guts to do." I kept the message. Haven't replied yet. Greg sent me a letter last month, said he was sober, working at a nonprofit now, wanted to reconnect. We'll see. Nate wrote too, mailed it by hand, didn't open it, straight to the drawer, unopened and staying that way. Today was Thanksgiving again, a different one. I set the table for 8. Tyler showed up first with his girlfriend Abby, then came Darren and his wife Rachel. 2 of my clients turned friends rolled in after that. And last to arrive was my assistant Carla, who helped me rebuild everything from scratch when I had no office, no plan, and barely a budget. No blood relatives, just people who stood with me when I had nothing to offer but the truth. Tyler handed me a pie with a tinfoil top and a cocky grin. Used your grandma's recipe, even found that weird syrup she used to add. Did you burn the crust? I asked. Like hell I did. We all laughed and gathered around the table as the sun dipped behind the trees. Backyard lights came on one by one, simple, quiet, solid. I raised my glass before we dug in. To honesty, I said. It doesn't always pay well, but it sleeps better. They laughed. A couple nodded hard. Then we ate. And for the first time in years, it actually felt like Thanksgiving. Not because of the food, not because of the plates, but because not one person at that table had ever made me question my worth.